Hey, what's up guys? Today we're going to be answering the internet's most common questions about the GPX Superlight 2. So let's jump right in. And the first one that we have is the GPX 2 worth getting if you're coming from the GPX 1? The double clicking on the side buttons are killing me. So in my opinion, if you're just thinking about upgrading, it's not going to be worth it in the long run. The main reason is because the only big difference between the two is that the second version here has 2000 Hertz while the first version only has 1000 Hertz. And there's been recent videos online from me and others that have pretty much proven that anything past 1000 Hertz isn't really going to give you any benefit whatsoever. Technically, there is a latency difference between the two Hertz, but in terms of realistic performance, there isn't going to be any difference. So there are other differences between the two versions, such as the clicks. The clicks here on the GPX 2 are using Logitech's Lightforce clicks. In the long run, these may have a less likely chance of double clicking, which I know is an issue on the first one, but only time will tell since this is still a very new mouse. There are other features on the GPX 2 here, such as adjustable LOD or liftoff distance, and it also uses Logitech's newer Hero 2 sensor. But even after mentioning all those things, if you have a GPX 1, honestly, you're not going to see a big difference or any difference at all in terms of your gaming performance by upgrading to the GPX 2. Now, also on the topic of the side buttons double clicking, from everything that I've seen online and watching internal breakdown videos, these side buttons are exactly the same between the GPX 1 and the GPX 2. So if you're having double click issues with these side buttons on the first version, there is a chance that it may happen later on the second version too. And then if you are having issues with your current mouse and you're thinking about upgrading, if you have the extra money and want some of those extra features on the GPX 2, I would say, hey, why not go with the newer version here? But if you're tight on cash and really do love this mouse like I do, if you want to buy the GPX 1 again, it's not necessarily a bad decision. Okay, so next question, can you help me decide? I've always had Razer mice and I'm fine with the Razer Viper 8K. Now I want to move to wireless, so I'm thinking about the GPX 2. Should I go and buy the Viper V2 Pro or wait for the GPX 2? Okay, so I've used the Viper V2 Pro as my main mouse for the last year, and I can honestly say that both these mice are absolutely fantastic. So in my opinion, when it comes to competitive gaming mice like these, we are at a point of diminishing returns, meaning that the internal performance and the accuracy of these mice are essentially going to be the same. So when deciding between these two mice, the biggest factor, and honestly the only factor that should be making the decision, is the shape of the mouse itself, because these two mice have very drastically different shapes. What I highly recommend you to do, if you have the option to, go to your local electronic stores that might have these out as a demo for you to physically hold in your hand, and just try holding them to see which one feels more comfortable for you and make the decision based on that. And I know that isn't an option for everybody, so let me try to explain the difference between these two shapes the best I can over video. So starting with the Viper V2 Pro, I would really recommend this mouse if you're fingertip gripping, where literally only your fingertips are touching the mouse. The reason for this is the hump on the back here is very soft, where the other two grips are going to be palm grip or claw grip, and both those grips have your palm contacting the mouse, and with those grips you aren't able to get a solid hold of the Viper V2 Pro because the slope is so gentle. And so what happens to me when I try to claw grip it, which is my grip, I'll try to pull the mouse into my palm and it slips under my palm, kind of like you see there, not allowing me to get a super solid grip. So if you're making any contact with your palm to the mouse, I would recommend not going with the Viper V2 Pro and going with the GPX instead. But otherwise, the Viper V2 Pro is absolutely an excellent mouse for fingertip grip. Now the GPX 1 and the GPX 2 here both have the exact same shape, and this is an extremely safe shape where yes, you can actually fingertip grip this pretty well unless you have very small hands. And just for reference, my hand size is going to be 19 centimeters by 10.5. So in the end, when you're choosing between the Viper V2 Pro here or the GPX 2, you're really choosing two of the best gaming mice on the market today. So you really want to try to decide based on the shape itself. Okay, so the next question is one of the most common ones I get about the GPX 2 here. Are the clicks noticeably heavy, or specifically noticeably more heavy than Razer's? Can I play mobile games with these clicks? So personally, I've never found these clicks to be heavy whatsoever. And in fact, these are actually some of the best clicks I've ever had on any mouse. So when comparing it to Razer's clicks here, earlier, when I first got the GPX2, I would say the clicks were actually about the same in tension. But now, after using the GPX2 here for over a month, it has actually broken in a noticeable amount, and now it's actually easier and less tension to click down on the GPX2 compared to my Razer Viper V2 Pro. And remember, this Viper has been used daily for well over a year, while this GPX2 has only been used about a month. So now, to be fair, I have read other people talking online that their clicks are heavy, so maybe I got a lucky batch, and mine specifically is really nice to use. And so I do want to be fair and at least mention that. But the other big difference when comparing these clicks is how satisfying and how solid they are. With the Razer Viper V2 Pro, they are in fact pretty mushy, where there is a lot of pre-travel before the click actually activates. That's all pre-travel that you see there. And then you have the click, and then the post-travel after. All that right there is post-travel. So that's not a very solid click, because you have all that wiggle room before and after, and it's essentially the same on both the clicks. So it's not like it's unusable at all, but it's just not dialed into the precision of the Logitech clicks that we have here, where with these Lightforce clicks, we have a little pre-travel there, and then the click, and then no post-travel. That lack of post-travel there is just phenomenal, and it's so snappy and really easy to spam that these clicks, in my opinion, the Logitech clicks, are way better than Razer's clicks here. Okay, so next question says, great video. If you choose to leave the software running in the background, does it matter if you have the onboard memory mode on or off? It definitely matters if you have the onboard memory on or not. So the onboard memory is going to override the software anytime the onboard memory is turned on. And so the software kind of hints at that as well too, because when you have the onboard memory mode on, the settings within the software for the mouse are actually locked, and you can't even change them when the mode is on. And then if you have the mode off, whatever settings you have currently set on your software, that's what the mouse will currently be using. So man, the software for the GPX2 is a complete nightmare. So I did make a full best settings guide for how to get the most performance out of your GPX2, because that software was just so confusing. So if you have any further questions on the settings, be sure to check out that video. Okay, so next question brings up a very important topic, and they ask, sir, I had a problem when I set the wireless report rate to 2000 Hertz. In Valorant, it's kind of laggy and I don't know why. Any solutions? Okay, so there's no easy answer to this because there's multiple problems that could potentially be occurring. One of the first things I want to mention is it has been reported that some specific games have a problem running mice at higher hertz. So unfortunately, there isn't any kind of master list that I know of that shows which games have a problem running higher hertz, but it's something I definitely think is worth mentioning, is that if you are considering upgrading to a mouse with 2000 Hertz or higher, you want to do a little research on the game you're planning on playing to make sure it doesn't have issue with a higher polling rate. And so that comment definitely doesn't mean that Valorant has an issue running mice with higher polling rates. It could, and I honestly don't know, but the other issue is that when you run a mouse at a higher polling rate, it also increases the usage of your CPU. So this is actually something that you can see if you're looking at your CPU usage in the Windows Task Manager. You can actually see it increase when you're moving the mouse on your desktop compared to if it's just sitting still. And so the increased CPU usage is completely normal, but one thing that could be occurring is if your CPU is not powerful enough to both run the game, anything else you have on the background, and a high polling rate mouse, then you can be running into issues with your CPU essentially not being powerful enough. And so one thing that I definitely recommend is using this mouse movement recorder program that I use very often to ensure that while the CPU usage does increase, that the accuracy and precision of the mouse is not compromised. So the first answer is it could in fact actually be the game. The second answer is it could be your PC and your CPU not being powerful enough. And then the final answer is actually an extremely simple one, is to just run the mouse at 1000 Hertz. Which brings us to the next question, and probably the most common one I've received. Does 2000 Hertz make any difference? No. There's been multiple videos online recently from myself and others that have essentially proved that anything past 1000 Hertz is not necessary. I made an entire video on this topic because I saw mouse companies aggressively advertising 4000 Hertz, and I was wondering if I was leaving lost performance on the table by not upgrading to a higher Hertz mouse. So I did a little experiment, and in the end found that 2000 Hertz, 1000 Hertz, and actually 500 Hertz all resulted in the same aiming performance across the board. Now, the other interesting things that have been published in others' videos on this topic topic is that there is a visual clarity difference between 500 and 1000 hertz. But then anything past 1000 hertz essentially has no visual clarity difference whatsoever. So it turns out that 1000 hertz really is the sweet spot. If you have a mouse going higher than that, by all means, run it at the higher hertz at the cost of lower battery life. But if you're currently using a mouse at 1000 hertz, there honestly isn't a need to upgrade unless the sensor is just extremely outdated and just may not be as accurate as the ones we have today. Next question we have asked, can I uninstall Logitech's G-Hub software after I set my settings and turn on the onboard memory? Yep, absolutely. That's the whole purpose of the onboard memory, is that you want to minimize the amount of programs and software you have on your computer so it doesn't cause any frame drops and or stutters. So once you set all your settings and make sure the onboard memory is turned on, you can absolutely uninstall the software and all those settings will be saved within the mouse itself. Next question we have asks, I just upgraded from the Viper Mini to the GPX 2. It feels wonderful, but I'm still curious if I need to put grip tape on. Does it really help? So when it comes to grip tape, it's going to be a very personal choice. For me personally, I absolutely love grip tape. As you can see here, my mouse is completely grip tape, and it's something I've been doing to almost all my gaming mice for years. For me, it definitely helps because the coating on most mice are going to be a plastic, and my hands do get sweaty over time, so plastic and moisture just don't mix and don't create a good grip, which is probably the biggest reason why I always grip tape my mice. Now, like anything else, it's going to stay as clean as you keep it. So I will usually wipe down my mice and my keyboards at least once a week. You can see I haven't cleaned this one too recently because you can see little specks of dust, but those will go away once I wipe them down with a wet wipe. And unfortunately, there's really no way to know whether you're gonna like using grip tape or not unless you try it. Thankfully, a lot of the more modern mice today come with at least some basic grip tape. So for example, my Viper V2 Pro and the GPX Superlight 2 had grip tape included for both the sides and both mouse clicks. So how much you decide to grip tape your mouse is also up to you, where you can decide to go with full coverage like you see here, or you can also go the bare minimum, where I've seen some people put grip tape only where they put their fingers. And if you're wondering what I have here on my GPX 2, these are the Pulsar Super Grips, and I actually don't recommend these grips at all, and I made a whole video on why if you're curious about that. And so then the other question that I've gotten numerous times is, how did I cut the grip tape so perfectly around this mouse? So for the side grips, I used the original grips that came with the mouse as a stencil and was just careful when I peeled them off so I can trace around them. And then I did the same for both mouse clicks because those grips came with the mouse too. And then for the back hump here for the palm, this was honestly just a lot of patience. And so the last common question I want to answer is, does the double click problem persist in the GPX 2 here? Would you recommend purchasing? So even though I haven't owned the GPX 1, I am very well aware that it had a major problem of the mouse clicks double clicking. With the GPX 2 here, because they're using Logitech's Light Force optomechanical switches, I can't really see them double clicking at all now or in the future. Now, I can't say that with 100% certainty because this is a very new mouse and I've only had this for a little bit over a month, but they are so solid that I honestly can't see them ever double clicking. I could be wrong and only time will tell, but like I said earlier, these are some of the best and most solid clicks I've ever had. And would I recommend purchasing this mouse? Absolutely. This is the best gaming mouse and the best performing mouse I've ever owned. I'm breaking records in aim labs and my stats in game are steadily increasing. I do want to mention one major issue that I've had with the mouse, which is the scroll wheel. It is so easy to activate and scroll this mouse wheel up and down that it's become a problem that now it's activated on its own multiple times for me. And also the Logitech G-Hub software is really confusing and frustrating to work with, which is a much more minor issue, but something I definitely wanted to mention. And then my last gripe and complaint about this mouse is the mushy side buttons. Mushy is a great way to describe them just because there's a lot of post-travel and pre-travel as well. But besides those three issues, this mouse has been an absolute dream. So I hope this helped, and if you guys have any further questions that I didn't cover here today, feel free to ask and I'll do my best to get back to them. But otherwise guys, thanks for watching and I really appreciate it. Take care.